She screamed, "Pack your stuff and go," at me while standing in the kitchen of my own house. She just thought I was the old woman living on her charity. What she didn't know was that the real deed was locked in a safe elsewhere, signed years ago using a name she had never heard. One fake eviction letter and a single phone call to Northbridge destroyed her plan. They brought a locksmith that night. The next morning, I brought the police, my lawyer, and the original title. My name is Beatrice Langford. I am 67 years old, and for the last 4, I have been a widow living here in Maple Ridge. This small slice of Westlake County is quiet, which suits me. It's where Harold and I built our life, starting with the duplex and the laundromat over on Main. I managed that place for 30 years, and the smell of clean cotton and steam somehow never quite leaves you. This morning started like any other. The sun hadn't yet crested the neighbour's roof, and the kitchen was filled with the low whistle of the kettle boiling for my morning tea. It was Tuesday, laundry day, even though it's just me now. I keep the routines. As I waited, I walked past the entryway table and did what I always do. I straightened the silver frame holding Harold's picture. It was his retirement photo, the one where he's laughing, holding that ridiculous fish he caught up at the lake. His eyes still looked right at me. "Oh, Harold," I murmured, wiping a speck of dust from the glass. "You wouldn't believe the price of bleach these days." My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it, already knowing. A text from Marissa. "Need you to be home around 10. Not 'good morning,' not 'how are you?' Just an order." Marissa is Evan's second wife, and her texts are as short and cold as her handshakes. My son, Evan, rarely calls anymore. Life gets busy, I tell myself. He's busy with his startups, and she's busy managing him. While the tea steeped, I grabbed my toolkit. The duplex unit attached to mine, the one on the left, needed its furnace filter changed before the new tenants arrived next week. I let myself in, the air inside still and cool. I knelt by the utility closet, pulled out the old, grey-dusted filter, and slid the new cardboard-framed one into place. It's a simple task, but necessary. I made a note in my ledger, one filter, $12.50 under property maintenance. Harold was meticulous about the books. I try to be too. This house isn't just a home, it's a responsibility. When I stepped back outside onto my own porch, something was wrong. A bright white piece of paper was taped squarely to my front door, not folded in the mailbox, but taped, aggressive and official-looking. I pulled it off. The adhesive ripped a small fleck of paint. It was titled, in thick black letters, "Notice of termination of tenancy." My blood didn't run cold. It just paused. I read the text. It demanded that all occupants vacate the premises within 48 hours. It was signed by the Cedar Line Property Group. I stood there on the porch, the smell of my neighbour's fabric softener drifting over the fence, and tried to place the name Cedar Line. I'd never heard of them. I'd certainly never signed a contract with anyone called Cedar Line Property Group. I was still holding the paper when Marissa's Tesla pulled into the driveway, spitting gravel. She got out, not even waiting for the engine to whine off. Evan was with her, but he lingered by the passenger door, staring at his shoes. Marissa marched right past me, through the front door I'd left ajar, and into my kitchen. She stopped in the middle of the linoleum, hands on her hips, as if she were measuring the space for new cabinets. "You saw the notice, then," she said. It wasn't a question. I followed her inside, folding the paper neatly in my hand. Marissa, what is this I don't rent from any cedar line? She let out a sharp, impatient sigh, the kind she uses when a barista gets her coffee order wrong. Beatrice, don't make this difficult. It's time. Pack your stuff and go. The words hung in the air, heavier than the humidity of a Midwest summer. She said it right there, standing between the refrigerator Harold and I bought in 2005 and the table where I balance the books. Evan finally shuffled in, his gaze fixed on the floor tiles. Marissa, maybe we should… We are, she snapped, cutting him off. She turned back to me, her face a mask of strained politeness. Look. She slapped a second piece of paper onto the kitchen counter, a printed email. The new owner is taking possession. They're finalizing the refi. We have 48 hours to clear the property for the appraisal. I looked at Evan. He was taller than his father now, but he seemed small, hunched over in his expensive jacket, avoiding my eyes. Evan. What is she talking about? He just shook his head, looking miserable. He's talking about our future. Marissa answered for him. We're refinancing the asset. I put my glasses on and looked at the email she'd brought. It was full of jargon about asset leverage and expedited closing, and then I looked at the notice I still held. Marissa, I said, my voice perfectly level. I would not let it shake. What is the legal basis for this? I am not a tenant? She actually laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, like a barking dog. Oh, Beatrice. Of course you are. You're just a tenant in the house Evan and I are about to refinance. You've been living here rent-free for years. It's over. We need the equity. I looked at her. I looked at the son I raised, who was standing silently by the pantry, letting this happen. I felt a deep, cold clarity settle over me. This wasn't a mistake. This was an attack. But I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I learned managing a laundromat that you don't argue with someone who's decided to shrink their favorite sweater in the hot dryer. You just handle the logistics. I walked past her to the counter, picked up the kettle, and poured the hot water into my mug. The tea bag bobbed to the surface. I looked at the clock over the stove. 10:03 a.m. I picked up the fake eviction notice and the printed email and placed them carefully by my ledger. Evidence. I see, I said, taking a sip of tea. 48 hours. That's what the paper says. Marissa smiled, thinking she'd won. Exactly. So I'd start packing if I were you. I just looked at her, over the rim of my cup. I've heard you… Marissa. When they were gone, the silence of the kitchen was heavy. The only sound was the high, thin hum of the refrigerator. I sat down at the table where I'd balanced the books for 30 years, and I spread the documents Marissa had left on the polished wood. First, the notice of termination that had been taped to my door. The paper was cheap copier stock, flimsy to the touch. The font was a standard Times New Roman, trying to look official. It listed a case file number that was just a random string of digits 129B4. It was designed to scare… I read the fine print, the section on legal remedies, and there it was. They had misspelled tenants' rights, TENENTS. A sloppy, arrogant mistake. A professional firm would never miss that. Next, I looked at the email printout. The sender was Cedarline Property Group. The email address listed was Info Cedarline MGMT Co. That co suffix stuck in my craw. It wasn't com. It was the kind of extension people buy for a few dollars when the real, professional domain is already taken. Who benefits from a cheap fake? My first call was not to a lawyer. It was to the Westlake County Recorder of Deeds. I sipped my now lukewarm tea, listening to the tinny hold music. When the clerk finally picked up, my voice was perfectly calm. Good morning. I'm inquiring about parcel 04A12 on Maple Ridge Drive. I need to confirm the current owner of record. I heard the rapid tapping of a keyboard. Ma'am, the clerk said, his voice bored. The owner listed on the last recorded deed is Maple Ridge Holdings Trust. Thank you, I said. That's exactly what my records show. My second call was to Chicago, to Northbridge Trust Services. They are the administrators Harold and I hired years ago. Northbridge, this is Mr. Davies speaking. Mr. Davies, this is Beatrice Langford, calling regarding the Maple Ridge Holdings Trust. Yes, Mrs. Langford. One moment while I pull the file. A pause. Ah, I see the file. And according to our internal protocols, I should be addressing you as Miss March. Is that correct? It is, I said. B.L. March. Beatrice Langford March. It was my mother's maiden name. Harold's little bit of theatrical privacy to keep my name off the public-facing documents. How can I help you today, Ms. March? I need to confirm my status as trustee and verify that no changes, liens, or requests for change of governance have been filed against the trust in the last 12 months. Of course. I heard more typing. I show you are listed as the sole successor trustee, effective April 6th, 2016, following the death of the primary trustee. No amendments or signatory requests have been filed. You retain exclusive signatory authority over all trust assets. Exclusive authority. I thanked him and hung up. Now, for this Cedar Line. I dialed Lorna Pike. We used to be in a bowling league together before her knees gave out. She spent 25 years as a paralegal for a big real estate firm, and she still missed the thrill of the hunt. Be everything all right? You sound starched. I'm fine, Lorna. I need your eyes. Can you do a corporate search for me, Cedar Line Property Group? Give me a second. I heard her keyboard clicking, fast and precise. Okay. Searching the state business database. Nope. Nothing. No, Property Group. Now. Hold on. There is a Cedar Line Title and Escrow, LLC, based out of the city. They're huge, very legitimate. But Cedar Line Property Group doesn't exist. Honey. Not in this state, anyway. It's a ghost. That's what I thought. What about a website domain, Cedarline MGMT Co. .co, not .com. Lorna laughed, a dry little cackle. B. That's a fake. 100%. Someone's playing games with you. The game was already over. I walked out of the kitchen, through the laundry room, to the utility closet. Behind the industrial-sized box of powdered detergent, I spun the combination dial on the small, fireproof wall safe Harold had installed. The safe Evan didn't know existed. I pulled out the slim blue binder. Inside, under the plastic, was the condensed certificate of trust. It was the only document I needed, stating clearly that B.L. March was the only person alive who could sign, sell, or borrow against the Maple Ridge Holdings Trust. I made one more call, to Sal, my locksmith. Sal, it's Beatrice Langford. I need a favor. Can you come by and change the core on the duplex, the rental unit? He was there in an hour, his truck parked neatly at the curb. As he was fitting the new cylinder into the tenant's doorknob, the unit attached to mine. But legally distinct, Marissa's Tesla squealed back into the driveway. She jumped out, her face flushed with anger. I saw his van. What are you doing? You can't change the locks. That's illegal. I'll have you arrested for illegal eviction. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, watching Sal work. I am changing the lock on the rental unit. Marissa, not this one. I pointed to my door. Given that fraudulent eviction notices are being circulated in the neighborhood, I have a duty to secure the property for my tenant. For safety. She sputtered. You can't. All set, Mrs. L. Sal said, standing up. He handed me the 2 new keys. Have a good day. Marissa just stood there on the walkway, her mouth open, defeated for the moment. That evening, my phone lit up on the counter. A text message from Evan. Mum, please stop this. You're making it worse. It's just some debt restructuring. Marissa is just trying to help our finances. Don't overreact. I read the message twice. Debt restructuring. Using my home, Harold's home, as a chip in their desperate game. I pressed the button on the side of the phone, marking the message as read. I set it face down on the kitchen counter and did not reply. The house was quiet again, the way it had been since Harold died 4 years ago. But this quiet was different. It was heavy, anticipatory. I walked into the small den Harold used as an office and looked at the wall, safe hidden behind a framed map of Westlake County. That was the safe Evan knew about. The one with the old insurance policies and the title for the car. But the real documents, the ones that mattered, were in the laundry room. My mind drifted back to 2015. We were sitting at this same kitchen table. Harold and I, signing the last papers to buy the other half of the duplex from Mr. Abernathy's estate. We had saved for years from the laundromat profits. Harold was the one who insisted on the trust. B, he'd said, tapping the thick stack of papers. We're not getting younger. And this property, this is our nest egg, our fortress. I don't want anyone pulling a fast one on us. Not the tax man, and not anyone. He didn't have to say Evan's name. Harold loved our son, but he saw him clearly. Evan was a dreamer. He didn't want to run a laundromat. He wanted to invent an app. He was always chasing the next big thing, the shortcut to wealth that Harold knew didn't exist. I remembered Harold in the lawyer's office, his thick index finger pointing at a specific paragraph. This part right here, he said to Mr. Vesper, our attorney. I want it ironclad. No loans, no refinancing, no liens of any kind against the trust property without the explicit, written, notarized signature of the acting trustee. No exceptions. That's very clear, Harold, Mr. Vesper had said. Good, Harold replied, looking at me. If I'm gone, B is the trustee, and she's not to be pressured. Ever. After the funeral, when the house felt impossibly empty, I forced myself to learn what Harold had built. While Evan was accepting condolences and talking about his father's legacy, I was in Mr. Vesper's office, meeting with his partner, Gideon Hale. I learned what a successor trustee was. I learned how to read the trust documents. I learned that my signature as B.L. March was the only one that mattered. I memorized the procedures. I ensured the trust's legal mailing address was a post office box, not the house address. I scanned every signature page, every appendix, and kept the digital copies separate from the physical ones. Harold had left me a shield, and I was going to damn well learn how to use it. Evan had tried. Of course. Gently. At first. About a year ago, right after he married Marissa. He came over for dinner. He was excited, talking about a new fintech venture. "Mum," he said, "I'm putting together my portfolio for investors. It would look really good if I could just put my name on the house. You know, as an honorary co-owner, just on paper. It would really help me secure the funding." I looked at my son, my boy, who I used to drive to baseball practice. "Evan," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I can't do that. The trust is very specific. Your father was very specific." His face fell. "But Mom, it's just a formality." "It's not a formality, Evan. It's the roof over my head." I saw the flicker of annoyance in his eyes, but I didn't back down. I did, however, lend him $3,000 2 months later for server costs. I didn't expect to see it paid back. Then came Marissa. She met Evan at some Start Lab mixer. She was all sharp angles and fast talk. Her favorite words were leverage, monetize, and equity. To her, good debt was a tool, like a hammer. I'll never forget the first time she came to the house for dinner. I'd made Harold's favorite pot roast. She barely touched it. She walked through the living room, running her fingers along the solid oak bookshelf Harold had built. "This is a lot of space. Beatrice," she said, her voice bright and dismissive. "It's a great location, but the whole house is so outdated." She had looked at my kitchen, the one Harold and I had remodeled ourselves in '98, and sized it up. "You know, you're sitting on a ton of locked-in equity here. You could pull 6 figures out of this place and put it to work. Instead, it's just sitting." That was it. That was the moment I knew. She didn't see a home, a place of memories and safety. She saw a lazy asset. She looked at me, the widow, the old woman who still smelled like laundry soap, and saw an inefficient manager who needed to be replaced. I stood up from the kitchen table, the memory fading. I picked up the fake eviction notice. This wasn't just Evan being weak or foolish. This was Marissa, pushing. This was her definition of good debt. I went to the entryway and straightened Harold's picture. Loving my son did not mean I had to give him the keys to the treasury. It did not mean I had to let him, and her, dismantle the fortress his father built to protect me. Harold's voice was suddenly sharp in my memory. "Don't you sign anything because you feel guilty. B. Don't sign for emotion." "I won't." "Harold," I whispered to the empty room. "This isn't emotion. This is business." My first call back was to Lorna. "Lorna, can you do one more thing for me, that email Marissa brought over? Can you tell me how to look at the insides of it? The header. B. You want the source code." Lorna said. I could hear the excitement in her voice. "Okay. Open your email. Now click View. Now show original." I read her the jumbled block of text. "Got it," she said after a minute. "The server is routing through an anonymous proxy service. They paid extra to hide who they are. Classic. Now let's check the domain registration. Cedarline MGMT Co. More clicking. Well. Registered exactly 3 weeks ago. Paid for 1 year. No owner information listed. It's a burner domain. B. A complete fabrication." After I hung up, I took my smartphone and laid the notice of termination flat on the kitchen table under the bright overhead light. I took 3 high-resolution photographs, making sure the misspelling of tenants' rights was perfectly clear. I knew the phone would automatically save the metadata, the exact time and date the photo was taken. Next, I dialed the main switchboard for the real company, Cedarline Title and Escrow, LLC. I asked for their compliance department. Compliance, this is Sandra. Ms. Sandra. My name is Beatrice Langford. I am a property owner in Westlake County. I have received what appears to be a fraudulent termination notice bearing your company's name, or a version of it. Can you confirm you have any business with a Cedarline Property Group? Ma'am? Sandra said, her voice crisp and immediate. We do not. Cedarline Property Group is not affiliated with us in any way. We've had several reports of this. It is a fraudulent entity. We advise you to contact the police immediately. I thanked her. That was checkmate number 2. I called Northbridge Trust Services again, but this time I pressed the record button on a small digital recorder I kept for taxes. I checked our state laws. We were a one-party consent state. It was perfectly legal. Mr. Davies, I said when he picked up. Beatrice Langford, calling as B.L. March again. For my records. I need you to verbally confirm 2 things. 1. That I am the sole successor trustee for the Maple Ridge Holdings Trust. And 2. That no other party has authority to mortgage or sell the assets. That is correct. Ms. March, he said patiently. You hold exclusive and sole authority. Thank you. Could you please draft a formal, notarized letter stating exactly that, and overnight it to my postal box? I'll pay the courier fee. He agreed. I clicked off the recorder. I wasn't the only one they were targeting. I remembered Marissa's wording, clear the property for the appraisal. They wanted the whole duplex, not just my side. I called Rudy Malloy, the president of our little neighborhood HOA. Rudy is a retired postman who notices everything. Rudy, it's B. Langford over on Maple Ridge. I just found a strange termination notice on my door from a Cedarline Property Group. Did you happen to see any others? See them? Rudy boomed. They plastered half the street. B, all the rentals. I've already got 2 calls. It's a fake, clear as day. I'm coming over. I want to see yours. When Rudy saw my paper, he just nodded grimly, adjusting his glasses. Yep, same font. This is a coordinated scam. I'm taking this to the HOA meeting. He was another witness. That afternoon, Evan came by, this time alone. He used his old key, a habit I'd never bothered to break. He found me in the kitchen, organizing my new stack of documents. Mum, he started, his voice soft, conciliatory. Look, I'm sorry about this morning. Marissa, she gets a little hot-tempered. You know how she is. She's just stressed about the funding for Bright Mint. I didn't look up. Is that what this is? It's just paperwork, Mum. A formality to restructure the debt. He was drifting, his eyes scanning the counters, the den, the entryway. He was looking for my file cabinet. He was looking for the paperwork. I see, I said. While he was talking, pretending to get a glass of water, I deliberately placed a thick, blue cardboard file folder completely empty on the edge of the kitchen counter, near his jacket. I labelled it Maple Ridge Trust 2024 in thick black marker. Evan kept talking. Something about market projections, but his eyes darted to the folder. He saw it. He talked for another minute, then said he had to use the restroom. He left his phone on the counter. When he came back, He grabbed his phone and jacket, leaned over, and gave me a quick, awkward hug. "It'll be fine, Mom. Just let Marissa handle the details." "Okay. Goodbye." "Evan?" I said. I waited until I heard his car start before I walked to the door and slid the deadbolt shut. A new rule. I picked up my phone. On the table. I wrote out a log of events Tuesday, 3:15 p.m. Evan Langford visited. Stated Marissa was hot-tempered. Apologized for formality. I then checked the new security camera I'd installed by the driveway last month. The footage was clear. It caught Evan standing in the kitchen, glancing toward the bathroom, then quickly picking up his phone. He didn't text. He angled the phone, snapped a quick, furtive photograph of the empty blue folder, and then put the phone in his pocket before heading to the bathroom. The bait was taken. He thought he'd stolen a glance at my defenses. All he had was a picture of an empty folder. But he had sent that picture to someone. I spent the next hour typing. I composed a formal email to the non-emergency address for the Maple Ridge Police Department. The subject was Report of Attempted Real Estate Fraud and Impersonation. I attached the photo of the fake notice, the WOIS domain registration, and a summary of my call with the real Cedarline title. I laid out the facts, calmly and clearly. I hit send. My final call of the day was to the law firm Hale and Vesper. "Yes, I need to schedule an urgent consultation with Mr. Gideon Hale regarding a real estate and trust matter. My name is Beatrice Langford. Tell him it concerns the Maple Ridge Holdings Trust." Gideon Hale was nothing like his predecessor, where Mr. Vesper had been soft-spoken and smelled of pipe tobacco. Gideon was sharp, wearing a suit that looked like it was cut from steel. His office at Hale and Vesper was glass and chrome, overlooking the county courthouse. I sat opposite him, my small pile of evidence, the notice, the email, the log of Evan's visit neatly stacked on his desk. He reviewed the original trust documents from my safe, his eyes scanning the pages with unnerving speed. "Harold was thorough," Gideon said, his first words in 5 minutes. "This trust is an iron box, but iron can rust if it's neglected. They are counting on you not knowing how to open the box." "I know how," I said. "I just need to make sure they can't pick the lock." "Exactly." He leaned forward. "They've already made several critical errors. Mrs. Langford. Misspelling tenants' rights is amateur, but attempting to impersonate an escrow company is a felony. We are not just defending. We are now building a case." He picked up his phone. "Sandra, get the recorder's office. I'm filing an updated affidavit of successor trustee for B.L. March. Effective immediately. I want it stamped and recorded by lunch. And file a notice of interest for parcel 04A1.2. I want a cloud on that title so thick a vulture couldn't fly through it." He turned back to me. "That makes it official? Anyone, and I mean anyone running a title search on your property, will now see a fresh filing that directs all inquiries exclusively to this office." "Next," he began typing, dictating as he went. "We are sending 2 cease and desist letters. The first goes to Info Cedarline MGMT Co. It will be formal, noting their fraudulent domain and impersonation. That's a trap. If they reply, they confirm they're operating it. The second," his typing became more aggressive, "goes via courier to Ms. Marissa Langford at her home address. It will cite her personal threats, her attempts to manage a property not her own, and her involvement in the fraudulent notice. We will advise her that any further contact with you or your tenants will be met with a request for a restraining order. He wasn't done. They are trying to refinance. That means they are shopping for a title company desperate enough or sloppy enough to push it through. We will stop that now. He instructed his paralegal to draft what he called a no refinance letter. I want that letter sent to every single title and escrow agency in Westlake County and the 3 adjacent counties. It will state that the Maple Ridge Holdings Trust is the sole owner. B.L. March is the sole trustee, and that any attempt to secure financing using Evan Langford or Marissa Langford as signatories is fraudulent. We're poisoning the well. What about the bank? I asked, thinking of Evan. Already on it. He dialed my branch manager, put him on speaker. Mr. Henderson, Gideon Hale here on behalf of Beatrice Langford. We are putting a level red alert on all her accounts, effective immediately. We are also flagging any attempts, past or future, to file a power of attorney or initiate a refinance application related to Mrs. Langford, her son Evan, or her daughter-in-law Marissa. Any such attempt is to be considered hostile and fraudulent. Understood. The manager, sounding flustered, agreed immediately. Good, Gideon said, hanging up. Now, you. That joint account you use for the duplex repairs. The one Evan still has his name on from when he used to help. Yes, I said. Close it. Today. Open a new account at a different bank, under the trust's name only. Transfer the funds. From now on, your finances and Evan's do not touch. Not 1 cent. I left his office with a checklist. That afternoon, I went to a different bank and opened the new account. I installed the new doorbell camera, a small, discreet one, and registered it. I then typed up a polite, professional letter to my tenant in the duplex. I informed him that there was a fraudulent notice circulating by an unauthorized party and that I, as the sole property manager, assured him his lease was secure. I handed it to him personally. He looked relieved. Back home, I assembled what Gideon called the field kit. I put it all in a new, sturdy briefcase. The notarized confirmation letter from Northbridge, a fresh, certified copy of the deed, the high-resolution photographs of the fake notice, a signed affidavit from Rudy Malloy at the HOA about the neighborhood-wide scam. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the digital recorder in my hand. I dialed Evan. He picked up on the 3rd ring, his voice wary. Mom. Evan? I said, my voice calm, the recorder capturing every word. I am scheduling a formal meeting. I need to know if you were aware that the Cedar Line notice Marissa brought me was fraudulent. Mum. It's not fraudulent. It's a new entity we're using. Evan. Were you aware that the company doesn't exist, that the domain was registered 3 weeks ago, that the real Cedar Line calls it a scam? Silence. Then, he said, Marissa is handling the paperwork. I just know we need the refi for Brightmint, or we lose everything. So you are confirming you are attempting to refinance my home without my permission. It's not like that, he snapped, his voice rising. It's our family's asset. Why are you being so difficult? Thank you, Evan, I said. That's all I needed to know. I hung up the phone. I saved the file. I emailed the audio file to Gideon. His reply came back in minutes. We have him. He admitted knowledge and motive. Now we wait. They will either back off, or they will double down. If they try to set foot on your property again, we file the harassment order. If they continue to file fake paperwork, We file a quiet title action and petition for sanctions. I turned off the lights in the kitchen. For the first time in 2 days, I didn't feel angry or afraid. I just felt ready. We met at the Maple Leaf Diner, a place on the highway that always smelled of stale coffee and industrial bleach. Evan chose it, probably thinking the bland, public setting would keep things calm. He was wrong. They were already in a booth by the window when I walked in. Evan looked exhausted, his eyes puffy. Marissa sat bolt upright, tapping a long fingernail on her phone case, radiating an impatient energy. I slid onto the cracked vinyl opposite them. A waitress came by, and I ordered a black coffee. Marissa waved her away. "Beatrice?" Marissa began, skipping any pleasantries. "We're glad you decided to be reasonable. We've been trying to handle this quietly, but you're forcing our hand." She reached into her oversized designer handbag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a photocopy, smeared and slightly crooked. "This is a copy of our limited power of attorney," she said, sliding it across the sticky Formica table. It was processed by Northbridge. It authorizes Evan and me to manage the financial assets of the estate, including refinancing. We're trying to save the family, and you're fighting us. I picked up the paper. It was another terrible fake. The Northbridge logo in the corner was pixelated, clearly copied from a low-resolution website image. The company's name was listed as Northbridge Trust and Holdings, which wasn't their name. I looked at Evan. "Did you sign this?" Evan. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared into his glass of water. I let out a slow breath and smiled. It was a cold, brittle thing. "Marissa, this is garbage," I said, not unkindly, just stating a fact. "I spoke with the CEO of Northbridge this morning. My attorney, Mr. Hale, arranged the call. They are very interested to learn that someone is forging their letterhead. They're already cooperating with our fraud report." Evan's head snapped up. "Mum, you called a lawyer. You filed a report." Before I could answer, Marissa slammed her palm on the table, rattling the sugar packets. "She's bluffing. She's a lonely old woman trying to hold onto a house she doesn't even need." "Mom, please," Evan said, his voice cracking. He finally looked at me, and I saw the desperation. "Bright Mint Labs. It's falling apart. The investors called our note. They said we were over-leveraged. We're going to lose everything. Mum, everything we've built. They gave us 1 week to find new collateral, a new guarantee. The house is the only thing we have." "The house is what I have." "Evan," I said. "And you're just sitting on it," Marissa hissed, leaning so far across the table I could smell her expensive, sharp perfume. "That is a lazy asset. Beatrice. It's not producing. It's not working. It's just there. While our lives are collapsing, you're living there for free, wasting equity that could save us." The waitress returned with my coffee. I waited until she was gone. "Let me be very clear. Marissa," I said, my voice dropping. "No one is living for free. I am not a tenant. I am the sole legal owner of that property through the trust. Harold and I built that house with our own hands and 30 years of profit from the laundromat. It is not lazy. It is doing its job. Its job is to be my home." "But it's just temporary," Evan pleaded, his hands clasped in front of him. "A temporary refinance. That's all. We just need your signature. We'll pay it all back as soon as we close the next round of funding." "No," I said. "Why are you doing this to me?" he whispered. I am not doing this to you. Evan, this is the consequence of your decisions. If you need money, you sell the $80,000 SUV you drove here in. You cut up the corporate credit cards. You give up the lease on your glass-walled office. You don't ask your mother to light her only home on fire to keep you warm. Marissa's face contorted. It was a mask of pure rage. You selfish old bitch, she whispered. We don't have time for that. We need it now, and it doesn't even matter. I have the deed. The deed is already in my hands. The diner went quiet in my head. Evan froze, his eyes wide with genuine shock. He looked at his wife. What? What are you talking about? Marissa. What deed? I got it, Evan, she snapped, turning on him. Last week, when you were making nice in the kitchen. I went into the office. I found the safe. I took it. I have the title. We don't need her permission. Evan looked like he was going to be sick. You stole from her. I thought you were just looking for bank statements. I handled it. She spat. And I understood. The decoy safe. The one in the den, behind the map of Westlake County. The one Harold and I set up years ago, filled with old, superseded documents. The deed she stole was the original quitclaim deed from 1992, the one that became null and void the day we formed the Maple Ridge Holdings Trust in 2015. She had stolen a worthless, 30-year-old piece of paper. She had stolen the bait. I reached into my handbag and pulled out my own document. Not a blurry photocopy. It was a crisp, heavy stock letter from Hale and Vesper. I unfolded it and placed it on the table, right on top of her fraudulent power of attorney. You don't have the deed, Marissa, I said. You have a history lesson. This, however, is a formal cease and desist signed by my attorney. It has been filed with the county court. It orders you to stop harassing me, to stop impersonating my trust administrators, and to stop creating fraudulent legal documents. If you or any agent you hire sets foot on my property again, the next document will be a restraining order, followed by a civil suit for damages. Marissa's eyes scanned the letterhead, the sharp, black signature at the bottom. Evan just stared at it, broken. Mum, he breathed. Marissa stood up so fast she nearly knocked the table over. She grabbed her purse. You're trying to ruin us, she seethed. No, I said, looking up at her. You're just finally seeing the bill for the life you're living. She looked at me, her eyes promising a fight she couldn't win. Try me, she snarled, and she stormed out of the diner, leaving the bell on the door ringing in her wake. Evan just sat there, alone, staring at the 2 pieces of paper on the table, her lie and my truth. The rain started just after 10 p.m., a cold, miserable Midwest downpour that turned the streetlights into blurry halos. I was in the living room, ostensibly reading a book, but my ears were straining, listening to the house settle. I was waiting. I knew Marissa wouldn't accept the humiliation at the diner. She wasn't the type to retreat. She was the type to escalate. At 11:16, my phone chimed, not a text message. It was a motion alert from the new doorbell camera. I pulled up the feed on my phone. A large, white van was parked at my curb, its headlights cutting through the rain. The logo on the side read, True Bolt Services. A man in a heavy yellow rain slicker was walking up my path, carrying a dark, heavy toolbox. And right behind him, huddling under a large black umbrella, was Marissa. I turned up the volume on my phone. I could hear the steady drumming of the rain and Marissa's sharp, impatient voice. "This is the one," she said to the locksmith. "The locks need to be drilled and replaced. New owner's orders." The man, his name tag, Jerry, visible on his slicker, looked uneasy. He glanced from the dark house to her. "Ma'am, it's pretty late. Are you sure the occupant is out? I don't like—" "The occupant," Marissa snapped, "is a hostile tenant who was served a termination notice 2 days ago. She is refusing to leave. I have the deed. We are the new owners, and we are taking possession." The man, Jerry, sighed. He set his toolbox down on my wet porch. "Okay, ma'am, your call." I watched him kneel. I watched him take a tool and fit it into the keyhole of my deadbolt. I heard the metallic scrape as he applied tension. I did not go to the door. I did not turn on the light. I kept the video feed running, recording every second, capturing Marissa's face, the TrueBolt logo, and the sound of my lock being attacked. I picked up the phone and dialed 911. 911. "What is your emergency?" "This is Beatrice Langford at 114 Maple Ridge Drive. I am reporting an active, fraudulent eviction and an attempt to unlawfully enter my home. A woman named Marissa Langford, against whom my attorney has filed a cease and desist, is on my porch with a locksmith from TrueBolt Services. He is currently drilling my lock. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? I am locked inside. They are trying to break in. I have them on a video camera. I am the sole legal owner of this property. They are using fraudulent documents. A patrol car is being dispatched. Mrs. Langford, stay on the line." Through the phone, I could hear the dispatcher, but over the doorbell speaker, I heard a different sound. A siren. Faint at first, then growing louder. The drilling stopped. "What is that?" Marissa hissed. A moment later, the street was flooded with rotating blue and red lights. I saw the locksmith stand up fast and put his hands in the air. I finally walked to the door, slid the chain, and opened it. A young officer was standing on the walkway, her flashlight beam cutting through the rain, aimed directly at Marissa. "Male, what's going on here?" Marissa immediately switched tactics. Her face crumpled. She stepped out from under the umbrella, letting the rain soak her. "Oh, officer. Thank God it's her. My mother-in-law, she's locked us out. This is our family home, and she's not well. She's trying to kick my husband and me out onto the street." As she spoke, a car door slammed. Rudy Malloy, my HOA president, was jogging across the lawn in a trench coat he'd thrown over his pajamas. "Officer," Rudy called out. "That's not true. I'm Rudy Malloy, the HOA president. This woman," he pointed a damning finger at Marissa, "has been papering this entire neighborhood with fake eviction notices. We've already filed a community report. She's running a scam. This is Beatrice Langford. This is her house." The officer looked from Marissa's performance to Rudy's angry testimony, then to me, standing calmly in the doorway. "Ma'am," the officer said to Marissa, "I need to see proof of ownership." "I have it," Marissa said, digging in her purse. "I have the deed." She pulled out the same sad, blurry photocopy she'd stolen from my decoy safe. "Officer," I said, my voice cutting through the rain, "I am the owner. That document is fraudulent. My attorney, Gideon Hale, served her with a cease and desist letter this afternoon for harassment. She is in direct violation of it. It was only then that I saw him. Across the street, Parked under the dark shadow of the neighbor's elm tree was Evan's Tesla. He wasn't in it. He was standing beside the driver's door, his hands shoved deep in the pockets of his jacket, his head down. He was watching the entire scene, illuminated by the flashing police lights. He did not move. He did not speak. He didn't stop her. He didn't help her. He just stood there, a ghost at his own execution. The senior officer took the photocopy from Marissa. He shined his flashlight on it. "Ma'am, this is a photocopy of a 30-year-old quitclaim. This isn't a title." He looked at his partner. "County record shows a holding trust." He turned back to Marissa. "This is a civil matter. You cannot force entry into a residence. You and your locksmith need to leave. Now." "You can't make me," Marissa shrieked. "This is my house." "Ma'am, you are trespassing," the officer said, his voice hardening. "I have a report of fraudulent documents and a violation of a legal notice. Leave, or I will arrest you. Your choice." Marissa stared, her face white with rage. She looked across the street, a desperate, silent plea to Evan. He just turned, opened his car door, and slid inside. He didn't even look back. She snatched her useless paper from the officer. The locksmith, who had been silent the whole time, was already packing his tools. "This isn't over," Marissa spat at me. "File it with the court," the officer said. He handed her a small card. "Here's the report number." I watched her storm off, soaking wet. I watched the locksmith's van drive away. I nodded to Rudy. "Thank you, Rudy." "Any time, B," he said, pulling his coat tighter. "You lock this door." I closed the door. The wood around the keyhole was splintered and scarred. I slid the deadbolt. I saved the 30-minute video file from the camera and emailed it to Gideon. My phone chimed at 11:50 p.m. A new email from Gideon. "I have it. This is aggravated harassment. I'm filing for an emergency temporary restraining order. The hearing is on the docket for 9 a.m. She won't be served until she's in the courthouse. Be there." I sat at my kitchen table, the adrenaline fading, leaving only a cold resolve. I picked up my phone one last time. I sent a text to Evan. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Westlake County Courthouse. You should bring a lawyer." The Westlake County Courthouse was not a grand hall of justice. It was a 1970s block of beige concrete that smelled of ammonia and old paper. We were not in one of the high-ceilinged main courtrooms, but in hearing room 3B, a small, fluorescent-lit box with scuffed wooden tables. Gideon and I sat at the petitioner's table, across the narrow aisle. Evan and Marissa sat alone at the respondent's table. They had not brought a lawyer. Evan looked like he hadn't slept in a week, his face pale and his eyes fixed on the grain of the wood in front of him. Marissa, however, was dressed in a sharp black suit, her hair pulled back. She was vibrating with a furious energy, shuffling her small, disorganized stack of photocopies. At exactly 9 a.m., a bailiff entered. "All rise." Judge Prentice came in, sat, and put on her glasses. She looked at the file, then at us. "This is an emergency hearing on a petition for a temporary order of protection. Mr. Hale, you filed. This appears to be a family dispute over property. Before we address the harassment claim, we must establish ownership. Who owns the property at 114 Maple Ridge Drive?" Gideon stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "We do, Your Honor. My client, Mrs. Beatrice Langford, is the sole acting trustee of the Maple Ridge Holdings Trust, which is the owner of record. He stepped forward and handed the clerk a slim, professionally bound set of documents. In this, you will find a certified copy of the grant deed. You will also find a notarized letter from Northbridge Trust Services, the trust administrator, confirming Mrs. Langford's acting as B.L. March, sole and exclusive signatory authority. And finally, you will find an affidavit of successor trustee and a notice of interest, both of which were recorded and stamped by this county's clerk yesterday morning, reaffirming my client's authority over any and all transactions. The judge spent a minute reviewing the packet. This seems perfectly in order, Counselor. She looked over her glasses at Marissa. Ms. Langford, you claim a right to this property. On what basis? Marissa stood up, her voice a little too loud for the small room. Your Honor, he's lying. It's our family home. I have the deed right here. She pushed her blurry photocopy of the 30-year-old quitclaim deed forward. She is just a tenant, and she refused to leave. We are the new owners, represented by our management group, Cedarline Property Group. Here is the email from them, confirming the change in management. The judge looked at the photocopy with visible disdain. Ma'am, this document is from 1992. It's irrelevant to current ownership. Your entire claim seems to rest on correspondence from this Cedarline entity. That is correct, Marissa said, lifting her chin. A complete fiction, Your Honor, Gideon said, rising smoothly. We have here the official Hoy's domain registration for Cedarline MGMT Co. It was registered 3 weeks ago, for 1 year, using an anonymous proxy service in Panama. He handed that document to the clerk. The defense's entire claim is based on a fraudulent company created for the sole purpose of defrauding Mrs. Langford and the court. That's not true, Marissa said. Cedarline is a major company. She is correct, Your Honor, Gideon said, his voice dangerously calm. Which is why we took the liberty of subpoenaing a representative from the real Cedarline Title and Escrow, LLC. Gideon nodded to the back of the courtroom. A woman in a navy blue suit stood and walked forward. Marissa's head whipped around. Her face, which had been flushed with anger, turned the color of ash. Please state your name for the record, the judge said. Sandra Walsh. Your Honor, I am the Regional Director of Compliance for Cedarline Title and Escrow, LLC. Ms. Walsh, Gideon said. Do you, or does your company, have any affiliation with Cedarline Property Group? Absolutely not, Ms. Walsh said, her voice clear and carrying. They are a fraudulent entity. We have no record of any transaction, no escrow agreement, and no contact whatsoever with Ms. Marissa Langford or Mr. Evan Langford. Our legal department is aware of their impersonation of our brand, and we are cooperating fully with a police report filed by Mrs. Beatrice Langford. The room was utterly silent. Marissa stared at Ms. Walsh, her mouth slightly open. She had based her entire offensive on a lie, and the lie had just been sworn against in federal court. Your Honor. Evan suddenly shot to his feet, knocking his chair backward with a loud scrape. Your Honor. Please it. It was just a misunderstanding. I was just trying to help. To help our family's finances. I didn't know all of this. She just wanted to help. Judge Prentice fixed him with a stare so cold I felt it across the room. Mr. Langford, helping does not mean seizing, and it certainly does not mean committing fraud. Sit down before I find you in contempt. Evan crumpled back into his chair, burying his face in his hands. The judge turned back to her papers. Her pen moved swiftly. The petition for a temporary restraining order is granted. Marissa Langford is hereby ordered to stay at least 500 yards away from the residence at 114 Maple Ridge Drive. She is to have no contact, direct or indirect, with Mrs. Beatrice Langford. She is explicitly forbidden from contacting the tenants of that property. Any attempt to file paperwork, liens, or loan applications against that parcel will be considered a violation of this order. It is in effect immediately. A bailiff picked up the signed order to serve to Marissa. Your Honor, Gideon added. We also petition for a full hearing to quiet title and to seek sanctions for this malicious and fraudulent campaign. Granted, the judge said, not looking up. Full hearing on title and damages is set in 10 days. I strongly suggest, Ms. Langford, that you arrive with actual legal counsel. She brought the gavel down with a sharp crack. Next case. Gideon calmly gathered his papers. I stood up. I did not look at my son. I did not look at his wife, who was staring at the restraining order in her hands as if it were a snake. I just turned and walked, my back straight, out of the hearing room. The air in the hallway felt cool and clean. I felt a wave of relief so profound it made my knees weak, and I had to stop and place a hand on the wall. I had won. But as I took my first steadying breath, I knew. This was not the end. This was just round one. The 10 days between the temporary order and the full hearing were not a period of rest. They were a hunt. Gideon Hale was a bulldog, and I, it turned out, had a good nose for sniffing out rot. The first break came from Lorna Pike. She called me, her voice crackling with the thrill of discovery. B. I dug deeper. Our Cedar Line property group doesn't exist in this state. But I ran a multi-state search. Cedar Line Property Group, LLC, was filed in Delaware just last week. It's a shell, registered by a proxy service. Can we find who's behind it? I asked. Already did, she said, and I could hear her smile. The filing agent for the proxy service lists a secondary contact, a V. Jansen. I did a little social media digging on our girl Marissa. V. Jansen is Vanessa Jansen, Marissa's maid of honor at her wedding to Evan, her best friend. The circle was widening. This wasn't just Marissa. This was a conspiracy. The next piece came from Northbridge. Mr. Davies, the CEO I had spoken with, sent a file to Gideon. It was their internal IT log. Just as we suspected. Someone had tried to file a fraudulent power of attorney 3 weeks ago. The logs showed the attempt came from an email address, northbridgesupportoutlook.com, a free email account, trying to pass itself off as the real thing. It was clumsy, but malicious. Then, my tenant from the duplex unit, Mr. Henderson, knocked on my door. He was holding his phone, looking pale. Mrs. Langford, I'm so sorry to bother you, he said. I know you said that notice was fake, but I just got this. He showed me a text message from an unknown number. It read, You need to be out by the 1st. If you side with the old woman, your security deposit will be forfeited for non-compliance. This is your final warning. This is extortion, I told him, my voice flat and cold. Mr. Henderson, would you be willing to forward this to my attorney? This is no longer harassment. It's a crime. He agreed immediately. But the real shock, surprise number 2, as Gideon called it, came from the locksmith. Gideon had subpoenaed the records from Truebolt Services. The man who showed up at my door, Jerry, had provided a sworn affidavit that his work order was legitimate. The order had been placed online, paid for with a corporate credit card. The name on the order was V. Jansen. The email address used to book the service was vjansen, Diva Bright Mint Labs.com. Marissa's best friend had used her corporate email address from Evan's own company to order a locksmith to illegally break into my home. She had tied the entire criminal act directly to the business they were trying to save. It was the single stupidest, most arrogant mistake she could have made. Gideon filed an emergency motion to subpoena the bank records for the new Cedar Line Property Group, LLC, and also for Bright Mint Labs, citing the email as probable cause to pierce the corporate veil. "We're going to follow the money. B," he told me over the phone. "I'll bet you $1 the credit card that paid V. Jansen for the locksmith was funded by the same account that filed for that Delaware LLC. While Gideon hunted the money, Rudy Malloy was hunting signatures. He went door to door, collecting affidavits from every neighbor who had received the fake Cedar Line notice. He compiled a packet of 12 sworn statements, complete with photos, showing a clear and deliberate pattern of attempted fraud across the entire neighborhood. This was no longer a family dispute. This was a community attack. Amidst all this, an email appeared in my inbox. It was from Evan. Mom. It read, "I know what she did." The locksmith. The texts. I didn't know how far she was taking it. I can't be a part of this. I am so sorry. I'm ready to testify at the hearing if you need me to. I'll tell them the truth. I read it 3 times. The desperate leap of a man jumping from a ship he had helped to sink, hoping to land on a lifeboat. I saw his fear, his weakness, his betrayal. I did not reply. I had one more visit to make. I went to the Maple Ridge Community Church and met with Pastor Davies. He thought I was coming for counsel, for comfort. "Beatrice, I am so sorry to hear what your family is going through," he said, his hands steepled. "Thank you, Pastor," I said. "But I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here to book the large fellowship hall for next Tuesday night. I'm working with Mr. Hale's office and the HOA to host a community information session on tenants' rights and identifying real estate fraud. We'll need the projector and about 50 chairs." He blinked, surprised, but nodded. "Of course. Beatrice? Of course." That night, the night before the final hearing, I did not pace. I did not worry. I went into the back of my closet, past the clothes I wear every day, to the garment bag that had been hanging there for 4 years. I unzipped it. I pulled out the navy blue wool suit that Harold had worn to our 30th anniversary dinner. It was his favorite. It was the suit of a man who was serious, honest, and respected. I laid it carefully across the bed. This wasn't revenge. I didn't want to destroy them. I just wanted to restore order. I was going to wear that suit to court tomorrow, not as a widow in mourning, but as the woman Harold had trusted to hold the line. The courtroom was full. I sat beside Gideon, the heavy wool of Harold's navy suit a comfort, a piece of armor. Judge Prentice looked even more severe than she had 10 days ago. Across the aisle, Marissa and Evan sat with a new, young lawyer who looked like he was in over his head. But the benches behind me were where the real story was. Rudy Malloy from the HOA sat in the front row, his arms crossed. My tenant, Mr. Henderson, sat beside him. Sandra Walsh, The compliance director from the real Cedar Line title was present. The locksmith from Truebolt, Jerry, was there under subpoena. And then, just as the judge called the case, the doors opened one last time. Mr. Henderson, my branch manager from the bank, walked in and took a seat behind Gideon. He was holding a single, sealed envelope. That was surprise number 3. Gideon rose. He did not pace or perform. He simply built the case, piece by piece, his voice a calm, steady rhythm. Your Honor, we are here today to confirm that my client, Beatrice Langford, is the sole legal owner of the property at 114 Maple Ridge Drive. But we are also here to expose a deliberate, malicious, and fraudulent conspiracy to steal that property. He laid out the timeline. First, the creation of a fraudulent shell company, Cedar Line Property Group, LLC, registered in Delaware by Ms. Marissa Langford's associate. Second, the creation of a fraudulent website domain to impersonate a legitimate business. Third, a campaign of harassment using fraudulent eviction notices, confirmed by Mr. Rudy Malloy and 12 other residents. Fourth, direct threats of extortion sent to the legal tenant, Mr. Henderson. Fifth, a late-night criminal attempt to break into Mrs. Langford's home, confirmed by Truebolt Services. He motioned to the locksmith, who looked deeply uncomfortable. Mr. Jerry, please confirm who placed the order to drill Mrs. Langford's lock. Jerry stood. The order was placed online, Your Honor, by a V. Jansen. The payment was linked to a corporate card. A corporate card, Your Honor? Gideon continued, which our subpoenaed bank records confirm belongs to Bright Mint Labs, LLC, the failing company owned by Mr. Evan Langford. The email address used was vjansen, Diva Bright Mint Labs, com. They used the company they were trying to save to finance the crime. Marissa's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection. This is a simple property dispute. Overruled, Judge Prentice said, her eyes on the bank records Gideon had just filed. Sit down. Gideon then held up the slim binder I had given him. And finally, the motive. They were desperate to refinance the property, but they failed. They failed because of this. He handed the certificate of trust to the clerk. I draw the court's attention to Article 4, Section 2, drafted by the late Harold Langford. No asset of the trust may be leveraged, mortgaged, or used as collateral without the express wet ink signature of the acting trustee. That trustee is Beatrice Langford, and she did not sign. He nodded to the bank manager. Mr. Henderson, did Ms. Marissa Langford attempt to file a refinance application? The manager stood, opening his envelope. Yes. We received an application for a $300,000 line of credit against the property, listing Bright Mint Labs as the beneficiary. We rejected it. It was missing the required signature of the trustee. B. L. March. It was over. The entire room could feel it. Marissa was white-knuckling the table. Evan suddenly stood up, pushing his chair back. His lawyer tried to pull him down, but he shook him off. Your Honor, I knew. I knew the Cedar Line email wasn't exactly real, but Marissa said it was just a formality. She was handling it. I didn't know about the locksmith. I swear I was trying to save my company. I just wanted to help. By helping, you mean committing fraud against your mother, Mr. Langford? The judge asked. He had no answer. The court notes your admission of knowledge and complicity. She looked at her papers. The silence was absolute. The evidence is clear, complete, and disturbing. Judge Prentice said, her voice filling the room. The court finds that Beatrice Langford, as sole successor trustee of the Maple Ridge Holdings Trust, is the one and only legal owner of the property. All claims by Ms. Marissa Langford are dismissed with prejudice. She looked directly at Marissa. The temporary restraining order is now permanent. You are forbidden from contacting Miss Langford. You are forbidden from setting foot on that property. You are forbidden from contacting her tenants. Any violation will result in your immediate arrest. Marissa just stared, her face a mask of disbelief. Furthermore, the judge added, given the overwhelming evidence of felony fraud, conspiracy, impersonation, and witness intimidation, this court is referring this entire file and the transcripts of today's hearing to the Westlake County Prosecutor's Office for immediate criminal investigation. Marissa's lawyer dropped his pen. Evan sank into his chair and put his head in his hands. Gideon and I stood. We walked out into the hallway. Marissa and her lawyer burst out a moment later. I stopped. I waited until she saw me. You told me to pack my stuff and go, I said, my voice quiet, cutting through the noise of the hall. So I did. I called the real owner, and the real owner, Marissa, is me. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. She finally turned and ran toward the exit. I saw Evan standing by the elevators, a ghost of the son I once knew. He looked up as I approached, his face streaked with tears. Mum. What do I do? I stopped a few feet from him. If you want to fix this, Evan, if you truly want to start, you start by paying your debts. You do not do it by trying to steal your mother's home. Don't come to my house until you understand the difference. I turned and walked away from him. I walked out of the courthouse, alone, into the bright, cold light of the Midwest sun. As I reached the corner, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a secure text from Northbridge Trust Services. Judgment received and recorded by our office. All trust assets are fully secured. Welcome home, Ms. March. I slipped the phone back into the deep pocket of Harold's suit jacket. I buttoned the coat against the wind, and I began the walk back to the house that bore my name. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. I would love to know, where in the world are you listening from today? Please let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. If this story touched you, please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary. Give this video a like and support us by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.